Hello, beautiful moms and entrepreneurs. My name is Charisse Walker, and I'm your host of the Unbreakable Mompreneurs podcast. This is a place where we come together to learn, grow, and inspire. So sit back, relax, and let's get started. Well, hello, Unbreakable Mompreneurs. Today I am here with Meridith Alexander, and I am so excited to talk with her. She's got an amazing story and resilience as a result. So Meridith, why don't you introduce yourself?
Woo! Well, first of all, I am super psyched to be here and to be talking with all of you who are listening to this right now. For me, I guess if you were to look at my resume, you would see all kinds of things recently, for ranging from being a Forbes coach's transformational optimal performance coach to, the author of books, motivational speaker. But what I think we're really here together about is that you can't really fully understand who I am here today until you understand that literally, even though I'm all about epic and helping my clients unleash the most epic version of themselves, which is empowered, purpose-driven, innovative, collaborative, I literally went through 24,177,600 of the most precious moments of my life, believing that there was nothing epic about me. And so it's not a magic wand. It's not that some people are born with it. It's not a matter of luck. It's not a matter of even the right opportunity. It's really about, in my humble opinion, discovering who you are, and then from that moment, complete with like the crazy, the tough experiences, all the good, the bad, the ugly, then deciding that those are the colors that you have to work with on your palette. And it's not about fixing the past. It's about who are you going to create in your future going forward. And that, if there ever is a secret, that is the secret. So for me, translating that to real life, it literally took, as you know, Charisse, the school of hard knocks, i.e., one crazy boulder to get that through my hard head. And one of the lessons that I've learned is that often these boulders, whether they're literal or figurative, they surprisingly aren't coming to destroy us. Usually they're coming to destroy the things that we have been holding on to that keep us playing small. And that sure was the case for me, although it was very dramatic. I had my own business for a while. I was a single mom. I'd been in a couple abusive relationships, which of course I beat myself up over, saying, I'm a smart woman. How did I end up in this position? And yet, when I crawled into bed at night, it always felt like I was never good enough. There wasn't enough of me to go around. I always said the wrong thing. I always made the wrong choices. It was really, really hard on myself. And I had gotten to the place in 2016 when the youngest of my children had finally graduated, and she graduated from Yale. So it was a big whoop, whoop, yay. I've made it. I did it. And yet I still felt like something was missing. And she went on a fellowship from Yale to to Peru, South America, took a trip with a friend to Colombia. And lo and behold, this crazy boulder that had been attached to the side of a mountain in Colombia, South America, for literally probably millions of years, chose that moment when my daughter was in the water beneath it to break off and fall. And so in the middle of my busy Friday high sales mode afternoon, I picked up the phone from a number I didn't recognize and heard the words that utterly devastated me. And that is that this boulder had cracked open her skull, crushed her lungs, fractured her spine, fractured both scapula, snapped her right thigh, and pulverized her left ankle. And if I didn't hop on a plane immediately, I probably wouldn't even have a chance to say my final goodbyes. So it was traumatic, to say the least, and something that I think most of us pray that we'll never experience, and have no idea how we're going to react if we do experience that.
So you just unpacked a whole lot of stuff that we're going to talk about. Before we go to the boulder, because I'm so happy that she's still alive, and I mean, that's extensive damage, and to even get that phone call. So I want to put that on hold for a second. I want to go back to something you had mentioned, that you had talked about how you didn't feel like you mattered in life, that nothing was epic in your life, and that you had been in some toxic relationships. And so that is, I want all my listeners to know, that is the whole purpose of this podcast. I'm going to get emotional because of it, because I think that we are raised as women, where sometimes if we do get in that abusive relationship, oftentimes because of the trauma we experienced as children, and we don't think we're good enough, or we don't, there's all these things that come in our mind. We get into codependent relationships, or we get into abusive relationships, and then we don't know how to get out. So the first thing is the fact that you got out of that. I commend you. Or even the boulder happened, you're already changing. And so I want my women and men listeners to know that anything that they set their mind to, they can absolutely accomplish, and that they are worth something, and that every single person on this planet, there's a reason that they're here, and that they just need to believe that to get to the next step. Like you being on my podcast today has been fantastic, because I've been struggling this week, like just down, and I'm not like that. I'm not that type of person. And so for you to, to hear your story that we're going to hear even more, I love that. And I want people to realize that are listening, that when they get into bed at night, they do matter and they are loved. So that's
absolutely. Yeah. No, I mean, I can't put enough exclamation points after what you just said. And I think one of the most profound moments for me, and we could do multiple podcast episodes sharing how many profound moments there were. But one of the most profound moments that what you just said brought up for me was, when this boulder struck, and I still had really low self-worth and self-esteem. I will share with you one thing. One of my first reactions was, why me? And not, why did this happen to me, Charisse? It is, why, when this happened to my daughter, did she end up with me as her mother? Because I am not capable of being the reluctant hero in this story. I don't have what it takes. My daughter needs someone who's capable of creating a miracle, and that's not me. I can barely create me, put on a great facade. But if everyone knew that little imposter syndrome bit, if people knew who I really was, how I haven't begun to get all of this, whatever this is, figured out, they never would have cast me in the role of this mom. That is so not fair. She deserves so much more. That was my first reaction. I'm not wealthy enough. I'm not smart enough. I don't speak Spanish. This happened down there. I mean, it was just this turmoil of feeling insignificant and inadequate absolutely gripped me. And so fast forward to like a week and a half later, which, by the way, as part of where I ultimately got to the power that I felt that I did have, which was to play a mean inner game. I may not be able to control the outer game, but I sure as heck can play a mean inner game. Part of that meant also inspiring the inner game beyond myself to those in her world, which is how the whole Sky is the Limit book actually came out, because that meant posting on Facebook things that would guide people away from envisioning my daughter as on the doorstep of death, but instead adding to the vision of her as this incredibly powerful little being who would not give up on her physical life and to potentially trigger that miracle. So all of this is unfolding live
Mhm.
on Facebook, and so ultimately captured in there. So as you will see, at one moment, I was sitting literally in the chapel in the hospital, Jackson Memorial in Miami, and I had been basically booted out as they changed shifts, and I was sitting there trying to get beyond the fear of what people must be thinking about me as I posted these things on Facebook, them thinking, oh my God, this woman is so delusional. Poor Skylar ending up with this kind of weirdo mom, right? And no, literally at that point, it was like, oh my God, but I have to do this for my daughter because I believed in my heart, this is the only power that I could give this scenario, right? I certainly couldn't do anything in the outer game, but thanks to all those other boulders, the abuses, the failures, all those, I had explored how do I play a better inner game. And so I had said, game on, and I will do this for my child, right? And so I sat in this chapel thinking, what does all of this mean? What does my life mean? And what flashed in front of me was that 3 experiences in particular, some of the abuse, some of the double crossing that had happened in my business, things that I knew I was supposed to feel grateful for because everything happens for a reason, and things that I was supposed to forgive because I'm this elevated being, right? That's the goal, right? And I was like, that is emotionally, that is not happening, right? And it was something that I just couldn't quite execute until I'm sitting in that chapel. And it was that same feeling, Charisse, as if you step out of your front door on the most beautiful, dewy spring morning you can imagine, and you take 2 steps forward, and all of a sudden in front of you is this magnificent spider web, which 1 step earlier you could not see. All of a sudden, it was like, oh my gosh, I realized that if I had cried 1 less tear during those previous boulders, if I had felt even a little bit of pain, if I had had a shadow that this might come back to help me be more resilient in the future, I would not have experienced exactly what I experienced, so that I went on the various quests and was willing to let go of things and ask new questions. And so it was just like, oh, this profound moment of like, oh my gosh, this is the ultimate, slightly weird, but ultimate expression of ask and it is given. It was as if I didn't even know that I was asking the world for this. And yet I was given the exact experiences that I need to be given so that I could sit there and be this mom that my daughter needed. And if that, which felt so horrible and so like inexplicable and useless, counterproductive, could actually truly prove to have value, then who am I to judge this moment right here with this boulder? I don't know.
Wow, that's interesting because you'd mentioned at the beginning too about how you were given this palette of colors, right? And we don't choose the palette of colors, we're given the palette of colors. But if we think about it, these palettes, and I'm just going to use red, blue, or blue and yellow, how red and blue together make something, yellow and blue together make something, red and yellow make something. And so how you used your palette that you were given and realize that those make new colors that you can then use as your skills to be able to help your daughter and project your, the trajectory of your life changed. So your daughter survives.
Yes.
What's the second boulder that happened?
So the second boulder after that was, of course, against all, medical precedent, she survives. Define survival. So survival meant, first of all, that my previous business, which was our total livelihood, and I was still a single mom, so I had nobody else who was, I had a boyfriend at the time, but he had made very clear, I'm a boyfriend. Okay. And I still had kind of low self-esteem.
Wow.
So this,
Yeah.
you know, so, um, so, yeah, so that particular business was very seasonal, which meant that you made your entire year's income in the span of 4 months. After that point, the people who were potentially your clients were completely out of money and funds. So there was no way, even if you would go and say, hey, you don't have to pay me anything, let's just put it out there and we'll each take a percentage. They were maxed out. They couldn't even do that. Ironically, the months that I was in the ICU with Skylar were those sales months. So Skylar was released from the hospital thanks to the insurance company who said, okay, she's done. This meant that she could not sit up on her own. She could not feed herself on her own. She could barely be understood when she talked. She could not at all be left in any room by herself. She would fall. And I'm not talking about standing up. I'm talking about just sitting safely. You had to be with her. She clearly could not do any of the things that we need to do, such as use the restroom, anything. She could barely lift her arm. It was truly a 24/7 gig. And when I say that, I mean, at that time, like clockwork, every single night at 3 a.m., the baby monitor, which now I never thought I would have a 22-year-old daughter who would need a baby monitor, but now we had one for her so that I could hear her request to get up and use the restroom. So every single night, I would get up at 3 a.m. and this was to try to navigate her from her bed into the wheelchair, into the restroom. And it's taking all of my capacity. And I was, 55, and in good shape, but still at 3 o'clock in the morning to be in a total full sweat and worry about dropping her and you're not quite awake. And it was quite something. And in the process, it destroyed my income for that year. So I had zero income. And I had zero time to dedicate to try to figure out where that income was going to come from. So it was really terrifying. And once again, I had to ask myself, what am I going to focus on and what am I going to make this mean? What was happening that was unexpected at the time was that because of the book and what I had written and people had seen the inner game, people were now asking me to speak on stages and to even coach the process. Could you teach me some of that inner game stuff? And my initial reaction was, first of all, I am not a speaker. Like, no, I'm the person you send on stage if you want to mess up the introduction of your speaker. Do not try to put me up on stage. That terrifies me. And then coaching, it was kind of like, well, this is like inner game stuff. It's not like I'm telling you how to get rich or anything, which most people seem to prefer, right? Not, God forbid, how to be happy. I mean, come on, right? So I kind of pushed back against that, and people around me were really making fun of that idea, saying, in fact, some of them were really literally angry at me for even considering it, saying, my God, you have your hands full, that you might as well just go out to Hollywood and say, I'm going to become a leading lady. I mean, nobody ever makes a living coaching and speaking. That just doesn't happen. You are not Tony Robbins. And it was kind of like, okay. And yet, again, fortunately, here's the interesting part, is I tried to do my best to try to resuscitate the old business and yet at the same time, I kept dabbling in a little bit because people started sharing, like recognizing us or sharing how much the posts had changed or influenced their own life. And I thought, wow, if I really can help even one person, then shouldn't I be considering that at least? And then I kind of married that with the thought of Meridith. Hello, your daughter has just survived the unsurvivable. And a lot of, the doctors started calling you guys the miracle family because what they were seeing was impossible, not just physically, but the inner game. In fact, they invited me back. That was one of my first speaking events, was they invited me back to speak to hundreds of their staff and team members and doctors about the inner game. And so I thought, wait a minute, that can translate. It should be able to translate. And so then COVID hits, which completely stopped my other business because it was in the entertainment business. And I was booking artists into theaters. Well, the theaters were closed for like 2 years. And so what do I lean into? The coaching. Wow. And I fell in love with it. And all of a sudden, before I knew it, I'd coached hundreds of people. And in the process, I'd helped entrepreneurs professionally. I'd helped, corporate professionals professionally. And so as it turned out, it really led me to really discover the formula that I use today. That really is what I call the epic you formula, that now really has helped me as a Forbes, Coaches Council, and really helped me work with CEOs and help them achieve things that previously felt impossible. So what I learned is that everything starts in the colors that you're putting on your palette and what you believe those colors are capable of creating. And it's not about balance, right? Because one gust of wind and knocks you off. It's about harmony. And that's why, whether it's with a finite number of musical notes or, to your point, a finite selection of colors, you can harmonize them into infinite, limitless possibilities. And therefore, that, to your point, every light adds to the cityscape.
I love that. Love that. So what do you say to someone who feels like they're stuck?
So most people that I work with feel like they're stuck. Yeah. And often it's a feeling of, I have tried everything. And usually it means you've tried everything in the same little hamster wheel over and over and over again. And where it starts with is stepping back and being willing to set your GPS. Yeah. And when you're setting your GPS, yes, it is about getting clear on your destination, but what absolutely must you do, or that GPS does not work? Allow your GPS to know your current location. And that's part of the problem, is that we are so anxious to get out there. And what's my out there? What's next? And how, that we forget the who. We are not the same person we were even a few moments ago. And the trick with that is that often who we are is so clouded in these stories that disempower us that we can't really get authentically to who we are without a little bit of guidance. And that's where, like, I come in to help you understand not only where you are, but who you are, and to really see yourself through the lens of potential. Yes, even thanks to these boulders, because it's not in spite of your boulders that you succeed. It's thanks to these boulders, when interpreted properly, that you learn how high you are capable of soaring. And so if you are stuck, the very first thing you should be doing, other than looking for help, if you want to get out of that stuckness faster, and I've done it myself. I mean, when I stopped trying to do it on my own was when I really made the progress. Yeah. And I have invested, I will be honest, hundreds of thousands of dollars in my own personal and professional growth, and it has come back tenfold. The time when I was not succeeding was when I was trying to say, Meridith, you're a smart woman, you should be able to figure this out on your own. It was trial and error plan B became plan Z, and it was over and over again. It was so frustrating, and that didn't change.
And I think it's because sometimes like we have these blinders on and we don't know any different. I use an example in my book that oh, I was going to out the person, but I won't. But their mom used to like, honey, go outside and get a switch, because you're in trouble. I'm going to spank you. So they go outside to break off a branch on the tree and bring it stupidly back into their mom so that she can beat him with it. Right. And
Yeah.
she didn't beat him, but that's, I envision that. Right. And it was a swat on the booty or whatever, but still, so he stupidly goes out there and gets the switch. And one day his sister's like, what are you doing? I'm going to go get the switch. And she goes, mom's going to hit you with that, right? And he's like, yeah. She goes, don't go back in. Just run off and go play. She'll forget about it. So he did. And he's like that was never an option to him. He never saw that. And so when you hire a coach, because I, like you, spend a lot of money too, when you hire a coach, they're able to come from a different perspective and see what you're not seeing. And so, yeah, you think you can get faster, but if you have a different way of doing things that you have no clue about, and that's the beauty of coaching. It is.
For sure. And it's, we all have blind spots. Even Einstein, I think, said that you can't solve the problem with the same mind that created that problem. And, and there's a reason why there's not just one of us, in my humble opinion.
I agree
right?
with that.
So yeah. So, it's definitely someone who is stuck. The first thing is to realize that you have to start asking different questions. And if you're really smart, you'll get help, because why? I mean, you've got one lifetime and you don't even know how long that's going to be. So I have a saying that, we may not get to control how long we get to play on this amazing planet, but we definitely get to control how epically we live while we're playing here. So why would we use up this one moment that will never be repeated any other way than becoming the sovereign of our own mind? That's one. That's really, really big. And when you're stuck, typically you're not. You're chained to your thoughts, thinking you over and over again. And it's like this relentless jukebox that just pulls things out. And, like any jukebox or like any song that gets stuck in your mind, clearly, if any mind should know what you like, it should be your own. And yet it still feeds us songs that we do not like. Just so we'll be thinking something. Our minds crave guidance. So it's up to us. We cannot miss the boat because we are the boat, but we do have to learn how to captain it, and how smoothly we go over the waves is determined by how well we learn to captain it, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, and there's a statistic, and I cannot remember. So it's like 80,000 thoughts or words we think of, and 95% of them are negative, and so we actually have to train our brain to rethink those things. And so, I love what you're saying, because it is so true. So if you're sitting on a park bench, because I ask everyone this, you're sitting on your park bench and your 18-year-old self is sitting next to you, what is one thing that you would say to your 18-year-old self?
I would probably repeat something that Howard Thurman is known for saying, and that would be, don't ask what the world needs, ask what makes you come alive and go do that. Because what the world needs is more people who have come more alive. Most of us strive to make a living as opposed to strive for having lived, having fully lived. And there's a big difference, and it is that, to kind of amplify that a little bit, it is, do not believe for a second that you are destined to show up as your own worst enemy. That's flabby thinking. That's being brainwashed in the wrong direction. You are here just as you would password protect your technology. You need to virus protect and password protect what goes into your inner technology. That's what it means, getting your it together, right? Your inner technology together. And you are responsible, and you are given the gift of your mind, your unique brilliance. Go out and give yourself permission to allow the thoughts that stick to be the ones that energize and empower you.
And that is where the title of the podcast came, Unbreakable Mompreneurs, because I want people to figure out what their passion is, and go do it, that they really can achieve. And you're a perfect example of that, because what you were doing before, that paid the bills and that supported the family. But this, you're alive, like your energy, it's like just coming out of you, because you know what your purpose is, you know what you're supposed to be doing, and you're living that purpose. So, if people want to get a hold of you, how would they find you?
So a couple of ways. One, if you were listening to this, first of all, I would encourage you to keep listening to this podcast, because clearly, I mean, what you are bringing is invaluable. And I stand here as a 63-year-old woman saying that I wish I had access to this when I was 18 years old. So first and foremost, keep listening. But in addition to that, if you feel like you are ready to stop settling and you want that edge, you want that opportunity to get a little bit forward, then I would encourage you to reach out to me. Let's hop onto a complimentary 20-minute brainstorming session to see what might be the possibilities for you. And you do that by going to bit.ly/go epic now. Each of the words are capitalized. So that's bit.ly/go epic now. Otherwise, take a look at my website for coaching, which is gritmindsetacademy.com. I think you're going to be sharing the links to my 2 books on Amazon, 100 Days of Epic, which is literally one little home play every day, and it's even gamified to take you from here to 100 days later, really owning your epicness. And Sky is the Limit is literally the play-by-play of those first 4 months. So I have those 2 books. And then, of course, I am Meridith with 2 I's. Meridith, think human beings, Meridith. Meridith Alexander, all over social media. So just stay in touch.
That's fantastic. And you have a movie coming out, you alluded to?
Oh, no, we just, we're in the very infancy, the little seeds of possibility. You never know. So, but yeah, we actually were featured early on in a big article in Prevention Magazine. We've been on the Miracle Show, lots of podcasts. So my mission is really to help ultimately millions of people learn what it means to unleash the most epic version of themselves and come even more alive in the process.
I love that. All right. Any last parting words that you'd like to share?
Well, one of my favorite is kind of embodies the whole life, go out and booyah, which ultimately is just, the one thing that I say to myself when I wake up in the morning is I actually wear a ring. And this isn't a marriage ring. This is a commitment ring to my soul, my ultimate soulmate, which is myself. And it's a reminder. It's one of the first things I feel every morning, committing to step out into my day as my own version of epic. And that's looking through the lens of empowerment, purpose-driven, innovative, and collaborative. And how can I discover what it means to be me in each of these moments today? So I would pass along that, I call it the epic you re-evolution moment. So evolve again over and over and over again.
That's so fantastic. Well, thank you. It has been a delight. And we'll leave the links in below if you want to get a hold of Meridith, but she is just a huge example of living her potential and finding what her purpose is in life and believing and doing and acting. So thank you so much for being on our podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. And if you are listening to this, you go out and find the epic you.
Love that. Beautiful moms, remember, you are unbreakable. Keep illuminating the world with your strength, pursuing your dreams, and reveling in the splendor of motherhood. This is Charisse Walker, bidding you farewell for now. Stay tuned for more empowering conversations on the next episode of the Unbreakable Mompreneurs podcast. Until then, keep shining bright. Signing off with love, Charisse Walker.